Welcome to the Healthcare IT Today CIO podcast. I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today, and I'm excited to bring you the most practical healthcare CIO insights and perspectives. We know your job is challenging, and we want to help you be more successful. And our guest today is Stephanie Lahr. She is the CMO at uPerform and former CIO. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, John. Great to see you as always.
Yeah, I think second time on the podcast. I was looking, I think you were our third guest about
Oh,
4
wow.
years ago, 6 years ago. I don't know. I lose track of time, but so it's good to have you back. I waited way far too long to have you back.
Yeah, well, glad to be back. Lots has changed since we would have last done it if it's been that long ago.
Indeed. So tell us about that. And maybe for those, I don't know if anyone doesn't know you, but if they don't, tell us about yourself and uPerform.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm an internal medicine physician, right, by background, and had roles clinically and then CMIO and then transitioned into CIO. And then a few years ago decided that I was going to venture into the vendor side. So one of the things that happened though while I was the CIO was I got to work with a lot of cool companies using cool technologies. And I met the team at uPerform. Actually, my training team said, "Hey, we think training needs to be transformed in how we, in its effectiveness and the tool set we're using. We'd like to jump in and do this project with uPerform." And so we did. And when I moved to the vendor space, I kept in touch with the team. And then about a year ago, I had an opportunity to join them as their chief medical officer. So kind of bringing it full circle from customer side to now supporting the organization from the inside, and really hoping to take that perspective of training transformation, even maybe workforce transformation to the next level through the industry.
And I think that's what we want to talk about today, because when you look at the major healthcare IT initiatives out there, like training is often not the first thing that leadership wants to talk about or is thinking about. So why do you think education maybe gets treated as an afterthought, and what are the implications of that mindset and not making it a priority?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things that go into that. First is the timing, right? Training happens later. It happens right before a go live, and then there's obviously the ongoing, which I think we can get into the important distinction between those in later part of the conversation. But because it happens later, I think it ends up getting pushed off in its thought process. And then the other thing that is a reality is technology leaders, health system leaders have a whole bunch of things that they are thinking about, and they're conscientiously trying to make the right decision about the right technology, about the right workflow change, the design of all of that. And I think to an extent, we sometimes believe probably inappropriately that, oh yeah, well, and then there will be training and it'll all be fine. And for those that specialize in areas like adult education, I think what we have been able to see over years, and even see through things like class arch collaborative data, is that adoption isn't the same, across the board. And a lot of the success happens because of the success or lack thereof of training. And so, I think we need to reframe a little bit on this. So I understand why it's not always top of mind, but I think especially now that we're seeing such an evolution in the different technologies that are available and how rapidly they're coming at us, and how they have such a significant potential to really be transformative in how we think about care delivery. The only way we're going to see the fruits of that labor come together is by true, adoption. And the technology itself creates potential, but education creates value, and adoption creates, far more than acceptance, but excellence.
Wow. Yeah, no, and you're right. I went to the Class Archer Collaborative. I've been a number of years, and even the training is not all created equal, right? So,
Exactly. Yes.
not having it is one thing. Not having good one is probably the bigger problem that many organizations face. So, if you had to convince a room of health system executives that education kind of deserves that seat at the strategy table and not just at the support desk later when they have questions, like how would you make that case?
Well, I think honestly, it starts by changing the language. Training sounds like a project or a task. And really, what we're talking about is workforce enablement, right? Workforce transformation. And to achieve that and to really get to where we're trying to get to with these investments people are making, we have to look differently at how we are going to achieve that. And things like, you know, adoption, productivity, satisfaction, and ultimately how that translates into effective patient care. I don't think there's any executive who would say, "Oh, well, those are metrics and things that, the training team should think about." No, those are metrics that everyone in the organization should be thinking about. And so I think it's elevating the concept and the conversation to being something that's not about a task, but something that is really about how we execute on the investments that we're making to achieve the results that we're looking for.
Hmm. I think a lot of people also look at training and think, oh, it's just remembering where to go. It's like memorizing, oh, this is where I go to order and this is where I go to that. Like, is memorization kind of the right goal for training, or what should an organization actually be optimizing for with their training?
That's such a great question. And I think it's one that I've started giving a lot of thought to lately because, again, in my world, starting as going all the way back to my med school days, there's been a lot of memorization. And the reality is that doesn't fit where we are today and where we're going. The world is moving super fast. And so training really actually needs to be more about building the confidence that when I don't know something, I can quickly in workflow effectively get to the information that I need. And we're actually seeing this in medical education as well. Even board exams, etc. We don't do it the same way anymore. We don't tell people you need to memorize it. We actually let people use resources during, some of the test taking because it's more about, do you know what you need to know in order to get the other information that you need? And that is really how the system needs to be designed when it comes to training and reinforcement of supporting workflow, because you're going to forget things and things are going to change. We don't want you to memorize it and stick it into a permanent core memory. Like, don't waste any core memory time on this stuff. Just know that you've got a great tool set that when you are unfamiliar or uncertain, you know where to go to find it.
Yeah. No, the body of medical knowledge is too complex for the human brain, I think, let alone the requirements for documentation, et cetera.
Which
I
are
hear
going
a
to
lot of
change.
people talk about personalization as well, like especially when it comes to training and even adoption of technology. At a high level, like why does a one size fits all education fall short, and how do organizations, how should they be personalizing the education to be able to work more effectively for their users?
Well, I think if you think about, how you learn best and what kinds of models are most effective for you, you learn from things that are tailored to you, right? It
Mhm.
understands your role, it understands the work that you are doing, it understands the previous experience that you may have had, and then can accommodate those things and train alongside that, right? And so I think there's an opportunity when training to be taking into account the elements that make individuals unique, not just in the job that they do, but in their own experience. And then the other thing that I think is just so important is so much of the focus on training for people is this idea of, oh yeah, when I get something new, we need to train everyone.
Mm,
That part of the training, that initial onboarding, is such a small part of what truly translates into success. Success is all the little things, the changes that are going to happen over time, the improvements that are going to come along, and how do you embed that into the workflow? That also is going to, necessitate individualization, both in the type of content and the way that it's delivered, ideally.
mm. Yeah, you probably don't know, but when I was implementing EMRs, my job was to train new people on it
I didn't
and
know
even
this.
trained the staff initially in the go live and all that. And it was so interesting. I think it was 6 months after we'd implemented. We'd been using it, everything was going well. And we were doing some training and talking about stuff. And one of the nurse practitioners was like, wait, you can go there? She's like, is that new? That's cool. And I was like, no, that's not new, but you just didn't know, right? Because and I found that a lot, right? 3 to 6 months after is another opportunity to train them on things that they didn't realize. So it is this ongoing process of things that maybe I couldn't process in that first training, which is really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean the volume of data at a go live is and or things to learn about it is
Sure.
certainly overwhelming, but then things do change, right? Improvements do happen and you need to be able to get to your end users and help support that information, that transition, and not just the what, but the why and the how and all of those things, because those will all help support people deciding, yes, I'm going to get on board with this and use it the way in which it was designed versus working around it or, trying to muddle through it in an unsuccessful way.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're a doctor and then became the medical leader and then, the technology leader as CIO as well. But if you were advising a health system leadership team about undergoing a major transformation, it could be anything, right? EHR, ERP, all sorts of things I mean, we're going through a transformation now with AI, right? What's the first thing that you'd tell them to get right when it comes to preparing their people for that transition?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think having a solid communication strategy that helps people understand the what and the why
Hmm.
goes really so far because the reality is each of these technologies that we transition or deploy, they each are come with a little bit of friction. This transition time is a little bit challenging. I had an executive once who gave an example about when you move into a new house, you're super excited. You're even though that's something you want to do, let's be honest, the process of moving everything in, it's
A
not that
lot of
fun.
work.
And so it's helping people understand and stay, get focused on, remember, this is the big picture of what we're trying to accomplish and being able to get that communicated. And then helping people through that transition so you can get to the part of enjoyment and realization of the benefits. So that communication, I think, is really sets the foundation for the success because then everything that comes after that training, changes, hiccups that will inevitably, come about will be rooted in an understanding of, yeah, but I know why we're doing this and what the goal is that we're going to accomplish. And it builds trust and credibility that, if there's some rough spots, they're worth getting through.
Yeah, that's true. What's your why? I think that's a Simon Sinek thing, right? That's
For
a good
sure.
one.
Yes. Personally, professionally, all the above.
It's true. Well, we always like to wrap up these episodes with a little career discussion, career advice. What would you say is maybe the best piece of advice that you've been given in your career?
Okay, so I'm going to frame this two ways, but they'll both be brief. So
Okay.
I feel like professionally in healthcare technology, the best piece of advice I've been given, continue to give myself and give to others is everything you have to stay rooted in a problem you're trying to solve.
Mm,
There's so many cool, flashy things out there, and more opportunities to drive technology change, potentially for the sake of driving technology change, than we probably are even aware of. That we have to in healthcare stay rooted in what's the actual problem we're trying to solve. So I find myself coming back to that all the time. From a personal level, um, I had a mentor once who said, reflect enough to learn, look forward enough to grow.
mm,
And that what has been really valuable to me because I feel like, introspection and self-reflection are important, but at the same time, you can get too far down a path of overanalyzing and looking back helps you identify what's possible in the future, but sometimes that forward thinking needs to be even further outside of the box. And so, kind of giving equal time and attention to both of those things will allow you to be a person who, again, is learning from the good, bad, and the ugly of what you might have been through, but not having it hold you back in a way that would prevent you from accomplishing things in the future that you may be capable of it without a growth mentality.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to be pondering that one a bit. I mean, in some ways, the looking back too is celebrating the successes and
For
not
sure.
just chasing more growth because, and not recognizing everything that you have accomplished as well. So, wow,
Yeah.
I love that. That's really interesting, Stephanie. Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk with us and share your insights and perspectives. Episode two of Stephanie Lahr on the CIO podcast was an upgrade over episode one. I think you keep
Oh, well, thanks.
we all keep growing, right? Which is
Yes,
awesome.
exactly.
Yeah, so I appreciate you sharing your insights and perspectives, and thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for the CIO podcast by Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcast applications. Thanks, Stephanie.
Great to see you.